I'm tired of saying, hey guys, and welcome back. So I really hope you guys had a great day today. Let's go together and see the changes on the class mechanics for Chaos. Before we can go and talk about the changes for each individual class on their mechanics, we have to talk about Chaos Undivided. Chaos Undivided is a new sub-mechanic that is shared from all Chaos units on Interbellum. There are 4 Chaos Corruption debuffs which stack up to 10 times and they last for 10 seconds. Chaos Corruption is spread on the caster and the enemies alike. Some rare effects will spread them to allies only. Some order characters will also have the ability to cleanse stacks of corruption from their allies. I'm assuming that will be the healers or the defensive supports. Chaos Corruption has both positive and negative effects which mathematically cancel each other out in power level. Chaos Racial Tactic will also remove the negatives from all Chaos Corruption applied to you. So I'm assuming let's say a tactic will have to be sacrificed for that, a tactic slot. Also, there will be another tactic which will double the positive effects of the corruption for the specific Chaos God the spec is designed for. So another tactic for the specific specialization can double the effects for the Chaos God the spec is designed for. Blood Marked is a Cron skill debuff that lasts 8 seconds and can stack up to 3 times. Certain Cron skills gain additional effects if the target is blood marked. We've seen similar effects with bleeding and marked on the Archer and the Witch Elf. Sleepy is a Slanesh skill debuff that lasts 5 seconds, minus 25% accuracy and minus 25% movement speed for duration of the debuff. And Plagued is a Nargle skill debuff that lasts 6 seconds and stacks up to 5 times, deals Igor damage over time. In addition to that, these values also apply per stack. On Crown, you gain 1% outgoing damage and 400 potency, while you lose 1% damage reduction and 1.4% outgoing healing. If it's a Nargle Corruption, you gain 31 HP per 4 seconds and 1% damage reduction, while you lose 200 accuracy and 250 Igor resistance. Slanesh will give you 1 adrenaline per second and 2% action point cost reduction, and you will lose 400 fortitude and 400 block. And Chinth, I've never said this one correctly in my life, gains 2% reduction cast time and 1 second cooldown reduction. That sounds very good. Lose 250 spiritual resistance and 115 sagacity. So this is the information about Chaos Undivided. It is shared for all the classes on Chaos. And now let's go and have a look on each class specifically. The Chosen no longer has the aura mechanism. It has been transformed to something totally different and unique. Chosens are the best at applying corruption for their specific specialization than any other Chaos unit. So instead of the orders to do buffs and debuffs, now they just spread them differently. Their actual primary mechanic involves them consuming corruption effects from enemies, right, in order to apply new powerful effects to the enemies. So every specialization of the Chosen has abilities that consume each of the 4 different types of corruptions we mentioned in the Chaos Undivided earlier. So you're going to apply a debuff, a Chaos Corruption to your enemies, and then you're going to consume that to give them a different effect. In order to understand that a little bit better, I have put a skill on the top left, which feel free to pause the video, read it, and I think you will understand how that mechanic will work. This also will mean that the Chosen is the best way to spread the Chaos Corruption than any other unit, as we already mentioned. So it will help if every other Chaos unit is hitting the same target and also have a Chosen in the group. Having said that, that doesn't mean, however, that they will not perform their roles very well, even if they're not surrounded by Chaos units in the same party. This is the new mechanic for the Chosen, and that's all the information we have. I think we don't need anything else. It's a pretty straightforward mechanism. Apply the debuff, remove the debuff, and apply a new effect to the enemy. The Marauder mechanic is renamed into Gifts of the Gods. It's pretty much the same mechanic as we had before. This is the mutated arm stance mechanic that existed before in the Age of Reckoning and Return of Reckoning. However, there's a few changes on the Interbellum server. First of all, no ability is locked to any stance. This means that you will be able to use every ability in every stance. You will not be able, nor need to switch stances by pressing buttons for that. That will be happening automatically. Also, there are no cooldowns on stances. This will make the gameplay a lot easier for players, since you don't have to press an extra button or get into global cooldowns or anything like that to switch stance to utilize your full arsenal of skills and abilities. Instead, certain abilities will automatically shift you into those, as we said, and other abilities will gain extra effects, but those ones will not switch you into any of the stances. For example, the skill you can see on the top left, when you use that ability, which is instant, it has no cost, you will get an enchantment for 8 seconds, and depending on what gift you have active, so what skill you pressed before to what stance you are, you'll gain the additional benefit from that. But this skill itself will not switch you to any of the stances. Furthermore, you have to be aware that the gift of savagery now in Interbellum will gain 20% movement speed. All of your abilities will apply 1 stack of Crone Corruption to the caster. You have to pay attention with the new chaos mechanic, whether the corruption and everything else is applied to the caster or the target. Okay, small parenthesis there to keep you focused on that. So you will gain 20% movement speed. All of your abilities will apply 1 stack of Crone Corruption to the caster and 1 stack of Crone Corruption to the target and 1 stack of savagery to the target. So 1 corruption is applied to you, 2 to your target. At 5 stacks of savagery, all stacks are dispelled and the target will gain stack of blood mark. For those kind of effects, please refer to the beginning of the video that we explained those. Gift of Pride, you will gain 50% pushback immunity. All of your abilities apply 1 stack of Slaanesh Corruption to the caster, 1 stack of Slaanesh Corruption to the target, and 1 stack of Pride to the target. At 10 stacks of Pride, all stacks are dispelled and the target gains Sleepy. Gift of Plague, you gain 20% life tap. All of your abilities apply 1 stack of Nurgle Corruption to the target, 1 stack of Nurgle Corruption to the target, and 1 stack of Plagued to the target. The Magus mechanic has also changed, and now in Interbellum is called Insanity. It has a base of 0 and a cap of 100. It will decay at a rate of 5 per second outside of combat, and remember, some classes, the mechanic decays constantly, not just outside of combat. At different breakpoints of Insanity, you will gain fanaticism, which cause your ability to have specific negative effects, which are labeled on the tooltip. There is a tooltip on the top left, so you can check it out. At Insanity 60, you will have Slaanesh fanaticism. At 80, you will have Nurgle fanaticism, and at 90, you will gain Tintrit fanaticism. I'm never gonna say that one correctly. This mechanic is inherently negative feedback system, and as such, the Magus abilities have positive output modifiers across the board to make sure that the damage is where it needs to be. Also, abilities will generate specific amounts of insanity, which is also going to be listed on the tooltip. Now, removing the insanity is part of its specialization, and they do it in different ways. And by doing so, you limit your output in a way which is also specific to that specialization. I don't know if that sentence, the 2 sentences are really clear, but what I understand is you DPS, you get insanity. Then depending on your specialization, you have a specific mechanic for removing it. So you're going to have 3 different ways depending on which specialization you're in. And you will limit your output damage in different way depending again on what specialization you have. So I think that's how that's going to work, which means you're also going to have 3 very unique ways of playing and dealing with your character. Now, the entire mechanic uses the sacred numbers of the Chaos Gods, which is Slaanesh is 6, Nurgle is 8, and Tintrit is 9. So it's the same thing as the breakpoints. Slaanesh is 60, Nurgle is 80, and Tintrit is 9. So the amount of insanity a skill generated will also be a multiplier of those 3 numbers, which are based on the lore of the chaos magic that they come from. Just a little note here about the Magus, about the abilities and the negative feedback system. When I first read this, I was a little bit worried that my output is going to be lower than others because the negative feedback, I'm going to be taking a lot of negative effects on myself, so I won't be able to do things. But after talking with some people, I realized that it's going to be okay. It's another way of limiting your damage output and giving the little cooldown most things have. For example, the engineer will have to stop and do kits. The Magus will have to stop DPS and remove insanity, and so on and so forth with different mechanics. So there's always something for every class. Or like, let's say, Warrior Priest have to go in DPS, go back in heal, go back in, same as Bright Wizard and other classes we've seen. So overall it feels like that's just the mechanic of the Magus, and some of these don't look very good on paper, but I'm sure because everything's been tested to some extent, and they're positive it works and it's going to be fine. The Zealot will now be known as the Cultist, and I know a lot of you guys wanted to have a DPS Zealot for a long time, especially if you've been playing Return of Reckoning, as you could have one more effective in Age of Reckoning. So here are the changes for you DPS healer people that love the Zealot. So the Cultist mechanic will now be called the Blood Sacrifice. Your more powerful abilities will generate stacks of Blood Sacrifice on yourself rather than costing action points. Now, Blood Sacrifice stacks up to 100 times in the last 6 seconds. For the duration of that debuff, you will take 6% wounds plus 90 incor damage every second per stack. Now, that must be an enormous amount of damage, depending on your wounds, basically. So the Cultists, for that reason, will have a default 25% life tap, meaning that they will be healed 25% of all the damage that they deal, and that is the default. And I emphasize the word default because I am certain that there will be some skills to amplify that. There will be some skills to do something else with this. It won't just going to be at 25. I'm pretty sure of that by myself. The Cultist, they can use their health as a resource, making them a self-life tap class, which means you're not going to have action points. You also can use your HP as a resource. Now, even if you're a non-DPS spec, you will need to apply damage spell or have access to additional healing in order to keep using your abilities. Don't forget that most of your abilities, the best ones, will apply the Blood Sacrifice stack on you. Start taking damage. Now, if you're going to start spamming powerful abilities, you're going to make the incoming damage higher than you can self-heal, which means you're either going to have to stop and heal yourself, have a healer, or simply stop DPSing for 6 seconds and remove the stacks, of course, and you go back to 0. Now, there will be some tactics and other effects which will help you to mitigate the incoming damage from the blood sacrifices, or bypass the mechanic at some times, or will give you some control over it. Now, they're not being very specific about what controls means or how long you can bypass it, but we can see that the 25% life tap is there, and there's going to be other things to bypass it, to control it, or mitigate the damage by getting more heal, by reducing the incoming damage. There will be something there to make this viable. This is the last class for Chaos, and just want to remind you that everything that has been released for public usage and for us to read has been concept tested or tested on the server, so it's not just document production according to the devs. So this concludes our review or preview of the Chaos units for the Interbellum private server for Warhammer Online, and it looks like they're looking really good so far, because we have the new mechanic of Chaos Undivided, where every single class is going to be spreading corruption around, including themselves in one way or the other. The Chosen being the best one at doing that, and will be extremely good if he's in a group with other Chaos units, but without making him crap when playing with other ones. The Marauder gets a lot more freedom and easier gameplay without having to switch into the different stances, because that's going to happen automatically, and it looks like we're going to see more Marauders than we've seen before. The Magus gets a very interesting mechanism, which is probably going to have 3 unique specializations in every other class, but this one having different ways of removing insanity and getting different effects every time. I think it's going to be a little bit more interesting and versatile than before for sure, but also more interesting and versatile than the Engineer ever was. Finally, we have the Zealot, which I don't know what's going to happen with the hard specializations because I haven't seen them yet. However, it feels like 99% of the people will be playing the Zealot as a DPS, who's going to make a lot of people happy as far as I know. But I want to see if he's still going to be a very good healer on one of the 3 specializations, because the mechanics we've seen today, it looks like they're a lot more orientated towards a DPS spectrum of things rather than healing. So I'm hoping that everything's going to work out. Chaos looks really good, better than before, I think, but it remains for us to see that in action, to see it on live, to test it. So hopefully the devs will speed up the schedule and bring that testing thing that we're talking about soon, and maybe we get some footage. Let's keep our fingers crossed and we'll find out soon. As always, if you're part of the team and I said something wrong, you'd like to correct this so we inform the people correctly, feel free to let me know on Discord or a comment below. I will pin it so it's on the top and people get clarification. If you're just a viewer, a friend, a subscriber, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, and comment. Help the channel grow. I'll see you guys on the next video.